Today we're going to look at Gantt charts. So Gantt charts are ways for which companies to schedule sometimes very complex activities or future events. So for each of you, at the start of each year, you will get a timetable. This is a thrilling part of the year because you get to see who your horrible maths, science and English teachers are. If you're taught by me, that's a wonderful experience. But for a lot of other subjects, it's maybe less thrilling. Alright, so how are timetables put together? So we're going to talk today to David Crosby, who is the timetabler-in-chief at Jiaocheng International School, Shanghai. I come over to this wonderful room quite often because he is a vinyl player and he has vinyls and he has Iron Maiden. So quite often I come over here to listen to music and quite often we talk about timetable issues because I'm the head of commerce. Okay, so if I have issues about the timetable, this is the man I speak to. So, generally, David.
Yes.
When does the timetabling process start for you each year?
Well, the process starts around about March, when we start looking at the existing or pre-existing schedule, make a determination as to whether things have been working well during the first semester, and if the first semester's worked really well, hopefully, then we'll follow a very similar procedure the following year. So yeah, March is a good time to analyse what's gone on before and start thinking about the future.
Okay, now you have a lot of different things to consider about timetabling. This school has a 7-period day. We have a 7-day cycle. Obviously IB students have to do 3 HL subjects, 3 SL subjects. You've got EEs, TOK, etc., etc. Teachers have certain teaching loads. So could you talk us through the process of how you try and fit that into a schedule?
Yes. First of all, I look at a year 7, a year 8, a year 9, a year 10, a year 11 and a year 12 and obviously a year 13. I look at an individual student and I look at how their day would be constructed, and then I would look at how their scheduling would be constructed to consider every single aspect of their scholastic life. I need to know what their subjects are, I need to know where the school's rooms are, I need to know who our current teacher loading is, I need to know if there are any teachers leaving, and ultimately, once I know exactly who our teachers are, who our students are, where our rooms are, what all of the subjects are, I will map out how a year 7 profile will look, how a year 8 profile will look, etc., all the way up to year 13. Once I've got a rough idea of what the profiling will look like to ensure that every single lesson has an adequate amount of time and space on the schedule, I will then talk to people like yourself, Mr. Crichton, who will then tell me who you would like to teach which aspect of your particular course.
Okay. Now, how much does the average teacher actually teach? How much does the IB coordinator teach, a head of year, a head of department teach?
Yes, all this is done, believe it or not, mathematically, whereby we have what's known as a 75% rule. And the idea is that your average teacher will teach 75% of their timetabled allocation. For argument's sake, we have 49 periods just now on the schedule. So a teacher will teach 75% of that 49 periods, which means that the way it's worked out is a maximum loading on any teacher would be 36 out of those 49 periods. A head of department operates on 50% of that loading. A head of year has 5 periods deducted from the 36. A head of coordinator type position, a head of like year 7, 8, 9, head of year 10, 11, head of 12, 13, they operate on a 50% loading minus another 20 to 30%, and that would imply that these sort of individuals would have something like between, in a 7-day schedule, around about 14 teaching periods.
Okay. Now, take a subject like maths, which students do most, I think, every day of the week.
Yeah.
Is it as simple as just sort of blocking it in terms of day A, period 1 is year 7, day A, period 2, year 8, day A, period 3, year 9, and then sort of blocking it like that? Is it as simple as that?
I would like to say yes. However, what I will say is that this is something that I did initially. I had to use a computer program to do this. There are things like, as you say, which are absolutely vital and are critical, and what they become for me are locked elements. Every student does math, English, and Chinese. Every single student. So what I did initially was I asked the computer, or I told the computer, that every student does this, which means that we have to have a position in the lines, if you want, if you're looking at the Gantt charts, that, for argument's sake, when can math be taught with year 7? When can math be taught with year 8? Because obviously if you've got 7s and 8s and 9s and 10s and 11s and 12s and 13s, that's 7 year groups. 7 year groups are doing maths 7 times a day, etc. And it locks itself up. So we can't just simply have a line of year 7s, a line of year 8s, etc. It doesn't quite work that way. So what I did with the computer was work out the optimum amount of times when we can have 2 sets of math, 2 sets of English, 2 sets of Chinese. Sorry, my apologies. 1 set of Chinese for years 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s, 13s. And it optimised out that we can have, for argument's sake, on a line, on a day A, period 1, we can have, for argument's sake, a year 7 math with year 11 math. And then on a day A, period 2, we can have year 7 math with year 10 math. And it permeates through, so that, for argument's sake, we never clash English with math, we never clash math with Chinese. Now, I got the computer to do that for me after I programmed in all the variables. From that, I will then have a whole series of holes, if you want. So I'll have lines where there's nothing happening, so I can say, okay, that's where we can put, for argument's sake, one section of year 10s, and then another hole could have a section of year 11s, and then you guys will have already chosen at some point what your subject choices are, and then what I will do is then optimise the year 10 choices into a particular 10 slot, and optimise the year 12s into a year 12 slot.
Okay. Now the school has moved from a 5-day cycle to 7-day cycle.
Yes.
Why was that, and what does it pose any difficulties for a timetable, or does it give you more options? Why did we move?
That actually is a very good question. The rationale behind it was that in a 5-day schedule, you're kind of restricted to literally we had something like 35 periods. I think we had seven periods on 5 days, and it's very restrictive. Obviously, the more expansive your playing field, when you look at your Gantt chart, you'll see why this is important. The more expansive your playing field, the more options you've got to play with. Now, obviously, the more you expand upon it, the less times these cycles will repeat themselves. So you could theoretically end up having less time. But what I did again mathematically was that I worked out that a 7-day cycle allowed for more IGCSE time. Not more IB time at higher level, more IB time at standard level. It also optimised timings for lower secondary PE, music, DT, etc., all of the, shall we say, the non-core subjects. It allowed me to give them 1 extra period, so they get 3 periods out of 7 instead of 2 periods out of 6. The math speaks for itself. So the 7-day cycle optimised the amount of time that I could actually give students for any individual subject over the period of the 2 semesters. When we did the 6-period cycle, so when I compared it with the 6-day cycle, it definitely showed mathematically that we got more time.
And what about, let's say, you've got the timetable finished, for 2017, 2018, you finished it, let's say, June the 30th, you come back to work August 14th, and the head of science comes wandering into the office and saying, we've got planned 4 coordinated sciences in year 10 and 1 combined science in year 10, which is, I think, different teaching allocation. I want to change that to 3 coordinated sciences and 2 combined sciences. Okay, is that an issue? A problem?
It can be, and it also can't be. If the rationale is educationally sound and it's for the betterment of the education of the student, I will make whatever requests happen for the good of the students. The structuring of the timetable and the scheduling is such that we've got quite a lot of fluidity. For argument's sake, you rightly say, can you go from 4 classes to 3 or 3 to 4? What that means is you've got effectively, you might have, like, say, 2 groups of year 10s. What you can do is you can push them together, then pull them apart again to actually generate either more groups or less groups. It's fairly straightforward. It can be time consuming, and I'm pretty sure you guys will have had an opportunity to see your schedules changing from almost from one lesson to the next, from whether you change your own subjects or whether your department has had to change the teacher or whether you've had to change classes to accommodate additional changes. As a rule, we use the first cycle to facilitate any specific changes. The actual changes themselves can be very, very small, and in some cases they can actually be quite large.
And what's the biggest challenge of timetabling?
Time is the biggest challenge. Once the process starts, it must be concluded at the actual stop time. On the very last day of the academic year, the day that you guys aren't here, I have to press a big red button. Okay, it's not really a big red button. It's that's what I call it, the big red button. But when I press the go, I'm committing to our new schedule, and it must work. If it doesn't work, we've got problems. Over the last 5 years, every time I've pressed that button, it's a bit of a panic, but it churns away, and so far every year it's been okay and it's worked. But yeah, that is the biggest challenge, is getting it ready on time. Otherwise, you won't have a schedule, and we won't be on go mode on day one.
Because you don't want students to have a timetable
with holes
empty.
In it. Yes, that's right. Yeah, which is, by the way, that's your personal study days.
Yes. Okay. And do you enjoy timetabling?
I didn't expect that. Do I enjoy it? I find it challenging. I find it at times exciting. There are certain problems that come along which are very frustrating and very annoying. But actually solving a lot of these very annoying and very trying problems is actually quite enjoyable. You say, well, yes, I've worked out, I've solved the problem. Can I use an example? Mm-hmm. Yesterday we had an example whereby a student, a year 7 student, or their parents I should say, had requested a scheduling change because we've now got options in year 7. And when I looked at the initial issue, there was no way around it. However, 1 hour later, after moving a few things around and following a slightly different curriculum pathway, we managed to put together a schedule that met the requirements of a specific individual. That's challenging, but very fulfilling, that you can actually meet a requirement for our students.
Okay. That should be a bit. So students, if you have someone you want to blame for you having double maths grade 6 and 7, it's Mr. Crosby.
Very sorry.
Not necessarily the head of maths, but it could be Mr. Crosby.
Yes. I'm very sorry about the double math and the double English.
Yes. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.